Chances are you or someone in your neighborhood is facing the possibility of losing your piece of the American dream, your home. Although there are signs that the situation is leveling off, housing foreclosures in the greater Cincinnati area have doubled since 2000. While the situation can seem insurmountable, help is available. Hello, I'm Kathy Lair, and welcome to this edition of Focus. In our continuing efforts to provide you with current information about ways to avoid foreclosure, CET and 91.7 WVXU are partnering with many of Greater Cincinnati's trusted community resources to provide a series of programs that will give you valuable information about the topic. Thousands of homeowners across the area are facing foreclosure due to the loss of a job, an adjustable mortgage rate that has ballooned, or a serious illness. What do you do when you get that notice in the mail? Well, one new and viable option is turning to a foreclosure mediator for assistance. How does the mediation process work? How successful has it been thus far? Who is eligible, and why is foreclosure something that impacts even those who are making their payments on time? Our special guest today to discuss the mediation program, 12th District Court of Appeals Judge Robert Ringland. Previously, Judge Ringland served as a Claremont County Common Pleas Court judge, where he initiated a foreclosure mediation program in 2008. Representative Denise Driehaus from Ohio's 31st District. She was a primary sponsor of House Bill 3 to impose a 6-month timeout on foreclosures in Ohio. And Joshua Vineyard, foreclosure mediator for the Claremont County Court of Common Pleas. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Let's start with you, Judge. What was it that compelled you to set up the mediation process in Claremont County?
Well, as a common pleas judge, one of my duties is to hear foreclosures. And in the early 2000s, it was a trickle. But every now and then, we'd run into somebody that had hard luck, down in their luck, and we try to work with the attorneys for the lending institution to see if, after they took the foreclosure, if they could work something out with the individuals. But I noticed as we got into 2006 and certainly 2007, this trickle became a stream, and then it became a deluge, and it was becoming a real problem. And I saw this coming. And judges, common pleas judges anyway, have kind of a network. We talk around from time to time and kind of talk about some of the issues facing us. And one of the judges from up north, Jim DeWeese from Richland County Common Pleas, and I were kicking it around, and he said, why don't we try this mediation program that we have for domestic issues and mediation for personal injury? Let's switch it over to foreclosures. And I thought that's a great idea. You mind if I run with this a little bit and tweak it? And that's how it got started.
Denise, let's talk a little bit about how you became involved in becoming a sponsor of House Bill 3. What was it that compelled you to push so hard?
Well, I tell you, foreclosure, as has been said, is not a new thing to Ohio, to the state of Ohio. And as I went around in the fall of last year and met people in the district, the 31st House District, which, by the way, is on the west side of Cincinnati, every street I walked on had a foreclosed house on it. Every street, no matter what street it was. And it occurred to me that this is a huge problem, not only in Ohio, but in my district. And so the opportunity was presented to me to co-sponsor House Bill 3, which is the foreclosure prevention legislation. And my predecessor, my brother Steve, had done a lot of work on foreclosure, and so I jumped at the opportunity and became very involved in trying to move the legislation forward.
Joshua, you are a mediator in Claremont County. How do you describe your job?
Well, my job I view as being a third-party neutral that sits in between the banks on one side, the homeowners on the other side, and tries to work with both sides throughout an hour-long sit-down process to try to reach some kind of solution outside of the traditional foreclosure process. Now, whether that's through a loan modification that the bank may be willing to pursue with the homeowner, whether that's through a repayment plan or some kind of a forbearance agreement that allows a homeowner to get back on track, or we even look at some options where, in the event that in the worst case scenario, a homeowner cannot save the home and remain in it, some options that might, allow them to make a fresh start without owing a deficiency to the bank at the end of the foreclosure process.
What have you seen so far in terms of numbers of people coming into the program?
Well, to date, since we began taking calls in April of 2008, we've had a little over 650 calls to the program where homeowners will call in to us asking for assistance. From that, you can almost see a funnel effect where from that 650 number, we've had approximately 55 to 60 actual mediations to this date that have actually taken place through our program.
Judge, does that surprise you? I mean, coming into it, did you expect it to be that number?
Oh, at first I didn't. I was realizing this trickle was becoming, for want of a better term, a tsunami. But what happened was that, it was just increasing. This is almost, when we got into the program, we're almost overwhelmed right away. We brought the program, and the program was a little different than that which was designed by the state, by some of the other programs throughout the state. We had a two-part program. In this case, we had the mediation program, which is the standard program, but before that, we brought in attorneys, because I met right away with attorneys representing the debtors, attorneys representing the lending institutions, and we found that perhaps we can get many of these matters resolved if we just have attorney to attorney representing each side communicate by phone and negotiate. It saves people from coming in, from coming to court, from coming to mediation, and saves a lot of time and money. So it's a two-part program. And only if the negotiations break down do we then move into the mediation program. So that was a different concept and was tried throughout the rest of the state. And it was working.
Now, Judge, these people are already cash-strapped that are already coming into the foreclosure
Right.
process. Are the attorneys that help them out, are they free of charge?
The attorneys are free of charge. In fact, thank heavens for the Legal Aid Society, which helped us. The Volunteers for the Lawyers for the Poor, VLP, basically administered the whole program, at least at the attorney-to-attorney program. And they helped, and they brought volunteer attorneys in. And these attorneys then worked free of charge to try to resolve these issues. And if it didn't resolve, then and only then would we move into mediation. The strength of the program is the volunteer attorney. The weakness of the program is the volunteer attorney.
Just not enough of them.
Because there's not enough. And we're running out. The attorneys that have gotten into the program have done so, and they do it with heart. They do it with all their strength and effort. But what's happened is they're burning out. I mean, these gentlemen and ladies are using 5, 6, 7, 8 cases, take days and weeks to resolve, and so we need more blood, if you want to call it, new blood to come in, and hopefully the Supreme Court's going to help us with that by implementing a program now. Attorneys and judges have to have so many hours of continuing education. They're now going to give credit for attorneys who get into the program to give them CLE, continuing legal education credit, if they get into the program to help out in the foreclosure program.
That be effective this year?
Should be.
Denise, we touched a little bit at the top about some of the individuals and the reasons they get into foreclosure. What has been your personal experience? What have you seen?
I have seen job loss, of course, in this economy. There's quite a bit of that. What you referred to earlier with the balloon payments coming into effect after a couple years paying a mortgage, people were taken advantage of in the past. And we have seen a lot of that in the past. That dynamic, though, is changing. There's still some of that out there, the subprime loans, the predatory lending. But now we're seeing some of the job loss, catastrophic health care costs. That is another reason. I just went to a forum 2 nights ago working in neighborhoods, had it and brought the Federal Reserve in to talk about what they could do to help the folks that find themselves in foreclosure. And we heard testimony from probably about 20 people. And those were the primary reasons that people have found themselves in foreclosure. One woman, though, got up and spoke about the fact that she's not in foreclosure, but there are folks around her that are. And so she is also impacted by foreclosures, just like we all are. Because if the neighbor next to you goes into foreclosure, that has a direct impact on your property value and what your neighborhood looks like and what your community looks like. And what I found when I was walking around the 31st House District was that not everyone obviously is in foreclosure, but it does have an impact on the entire neighborhood. And you see that. We had a story of a gentleman who came forward. He had just remodeled his kitchen and spent about $15,000 on his kitchen. The guy next to him foreclosed. Well, his property value went down. he had just invested in his property. It's very frustrating. And so I think people need to recognize that this is a problem that affects everybody, most importantly the family in the home, but also the neighbors and the business owners and the entire community. And if it's not in your community, it still has an impact. I think what we've seen is that this problem is moving into the suburbs and into kind of the outer rings and into the rural areas in the state of Ohio. And so people that weren't intimately familiar with foreclosure are now starting to understand its impacts. And so that's part of the important piece of House Bill 3 was alerting people to the fact that even though this might be right next or might not be right next door to you, it still has a direct impact on what's going on in your neighborhoods and your communities.
Joshua, is that what you're seeing pretty much people across the board?
That's precisely what I'm seeing, Kathy. It's, it affects people of any income level, any neighborhood. What we see, we don't see a lot of folks that just don't want to pay their mortgages and just stop paying. Instead, what we see are people who have, as Representative Driehaus said, catastrophic injuries. They lose their spouse. They lose their jobs. Good people who, for whatever reason, have had a hardship in their life that just, want to get back on track. It's our job in that to help them where we can.
Eligibility requirements for this program?
The only eligibility requirements for our Claremont County program is that the homeowner already be involved in the foreclosure process. The foreclosure complaint has to be filed already in the case. Aside from that, there's not a requirement that there actually be an attorney present for the purposes of a mediation. While we would always encourage anyone to take available of those resources that might be out there, it's not required that there's an attorney present, and I would say in about 80% of the cases that we have in Claremont County, the homeowners come in and just represent themselves for the purposes of the mediation. And that's fine. We let them know that's fine, and part of my job then becomes almost to educate them along the way through the process to make sure that they have an understanding of what the bank is trying to offer.
I know all too often we're seeing people come in late. They've hidden the foreclosures, they put them away because they can't deal with it. Judge?
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things we had to deal with people when they got their notice would simply not open it because at that stage they're in denial. And so we instituted a concept where we set a separate card out, an innocuous looking card notification saying, look, you may be able to save your home. And that was a concept which, frankly, I think Claremont County was the first to do that. And I think it's a great idea. But one of the interesting things that I've noticed in adding to Josh's point is that according to the Supreme Court, that we're seeing now a lot of foreclosures which are being resolved without even going to mediation. That people on their own are able now to contact and see how the process works, contact the lending institutions, and we're starting to see foreclosures which are being dismissed, resolved, even without going through this program. So it's catching on. And obviously, the more people understand the program, the more, hopefully, the program will work.
Now, Denise, the House Bill 3 that we've been touching on that passed the House, it has a 6-month moratorium on foreclosures.
Right.
Explain to us how that would work.
It's important to know that it does not apply to vacant properties. We want those to move forward as quickly as possible. And it's on residential units, 1 to 4 unit residential properties. During the moratorium, a person that would like to participate in the moratorium has to pay half of their mortgage payment per month to remain engaged in the process. If they are not able or unwilling to participate in that part of it, the moratorium would not apply. But if you're someone that there's some potential that you can stay in your home, this would work for you. And so during the moratorium, we would hope that people would take advantage of some of the federal dollars that are coming down. There's a lot of work happening at the federal level on foreclosure as well, and we want Ohioans to be able to take advantage of some of those services. For instance, I know you've had programs about this before, but the servicer piece of this is so important, and the federal government has recognized that. So they've incentivized servicers to do these workouts, and they're giving them cash bonuses bonuses, for lack of a better term, if they were to work out a modification with the borrower. And so that's happening right now. So what we're suggesting is let's call a timeout. Let's allow that money to come to Ohio and take advantage of those dollars. Also, in the state of Ohio, the second piece of the legislation is to license servicers. The servicers are not licensed in the state of Ohio. We're unable to track trends. We're unable to get a feel for what they're doing. And back in 2007, the governor had this compact where he talked to the servicers, and they voluntarily agreed that they would try to work out modifications with borrowers in the interest of everyone in the state. Some participated, some did not. It wasn't terribly effective, and so now we're to the point where we want to license the servicers. Oftentimes they're from out of state, and so their interests are very different than what folks in the state are interested in doing, which is save the homes. Also, there's a $750 filing fee, foreclosure filing fee in the legislation. That money would go to fraud work, to the Supreme Court, for some mediation work to create and then keep the database running, and then some money would go down to the municipalities to remediate some of the properties that have gone through foreclosure, and the other large chunk of money would go to housing counselors. That works similar to during the mediation process. I know that if a mediator or a housing counselor gets involved with the borrower and can work between the borrower and the servicer, the rate of success is 50% or higher. With working in neighborhoods, their rate of success is like 70%. So it's critical that the borrower and the servicer are able to communicate with one another and work out a modification. Because I think we need to understand that it's not only in the best interest of the borrower, but the lender is also interested in working out a modification, because they don't lose their asset and they don't go through foreclosure and then have to resell that property at a much lower value than they would collect if they were able to modify the loan. So I think it's important to recognize that this process, the mediation process and the housing counselor process, works well for both the lender and the borrower and the community at large. So in addition to that, the House Bill 3 does carve out small banks and credit unions for both the moratorium piece and the foreclosure filing piece. These institutions are on the ground. They know who they're lending to. They know that Joan is the one that took out the loan and she has a difficulty, her husband passed away. They want to work with her. They understand these dynamics. And so because we recognize that, and while we went to meet with small bankers in the communities, I know I met with my own, and in recognition of the good work that they're doing, they have been carved out of part of the legislation, because it's really not targeted at them. It's targeted at the folks that are kind of coming in, trying to work these things out quickly, not to the benefit of either the borrower or the lender.
Josh, based on the number of cases that have come before you, there's got to be a few of them that you're like very, very happy to have seen resolved in a positive manner.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of those?
Sure. And first, before I get into that, Kathy, I'd like to say that our program, as Denise just said, the success rate of our program also is right at about 50%. And
only in existence for 1 year.
Right. We're at about a 50% ratio right now of folks being able to stay in their homes, and the earlier they begin the process, the earlier they contact us, the more likely that success will be. As to specific success stories, one in particular springs to mind. This case occurred, we had it about a month and a half, 2 months ago. There was a younger lady with a daughter, and professional, successful lady who was involved in an abusive relationship, had to leave the home to ensure her own personal safety. Her husband and she ultimately separated, parted ways, and through working with our program and being proactive and working with the lenders, she was able to stay in the home that her daughter loved so much, and was able to keep her daughter in that same school district. And that's just, I think, a good example of what we can do, and we've had many more success stories like that, but that's the one that really springs to mind right off the top of my head.
Somebody watching this program saying, you know what, I'd like to get into this type of program. What do you recommend they do? What's the next step?
Well, Josh, you have the number for the mediation program in Claremont County.
I do. It is area code 513-732-7134. And if someone's interested in becoming involved in our program, we would recommend that just as soon as you receive that foreclosure complaint and the summons from the court, don't delay. Go ahead, give us a call. I'd be more than happy to speak with you, kind of point you in the right direction as far as what your steps need to be going forward. And if a mediation becomes necessary, if a workout can't be reached with your lender, I'd be more than welcome to have you in.
Judge, I would imagine there's a lot of counties, based on this coming out and finding out how successful this has been, have inquired, how do we do this too?
There are, and we have meetings, and Attorney General Cordray has been very active in setting a program. Save Our Homes is very active now, and there's a whole plethora of numbers and agencies out there that are willing to help, which is good in one way, and a little distracting in another, because there's so many out there that want to help that it's hard for people to really focus on who the main contact point is. And I think that's probably one of the goals, and with this House bill, I think that may help. We went into this program initially with the idea that if we say one home, put one family, keep one family at their dinner table at night to have a family meal in their house, or one child who goes to bed in their own bed, it's a success. And it's obviously been more than a success. And we thank everybody who's pitched in on this, who's come on board, and whether it be the judiciary or the legislature or the Attorney General, the executive branches, everybody's been doing their part, and we're very thankful.
The thing is, where do you go from here, this program?
Well, we continue to need as I say, new blood. Obviously, it's not going to go away right away. The problem, people predict different time frames, but probably another year and a half, I would think. So we just got to keep plugging on. And one of the things I want to push, or I suppose emphasize, is kind of a futuristic, let's find out how we got in this problem in the first place. I've noticed that frankly, our young people have no idea of budgeting, and frankly, the schools don't cover this much anymore. At least a lot of schools don't. My idea is to start going to the school boards and saying, look, why don't we emphasize a program? It used to be called home ec when I was in school, but yeah, I'm aging myself. But a similar program, how to budget, how to write checks,
life skills.
Life skills, yeah. Exactly. And I think that's probably a target that we can hopefully avoid this kind of thing in the future. God help us, should it ever occur again.
Right. Well, and financial literacy is something that we have advocated for in the legislature, too. Right. That clearly that's part of the reason we got into this mess. Let me just say that we're on a record pace in 2009 with foreclosures. So we had 85,000 foreclosures last year. We've had a rise every year for the last 13 years, and we're on a record pace in 2009. So the problem is not going away, unfortunately. I hope it's ebbs a little bit in a year and a half. But in Hamilton County, because we've talked about Claremont County, the process in Hamilton County is that when you get the foreclosure notice, you also get a sheet of paper that outlines some of the agencies that are available to you to do the housing counseling. And it's going out through the clerk of courts. It's very helpful. Not all the counties throughout the state are doing that, unfortunately, and we have encouraged them, even without the legislation, to start including a sheet of paper that allows people to tap into these housing counselors, because it's so important to hook them up. And so as they go through this, these agencies are outlined. Save the Dream is the organization at the state level that kind of is the clearinghouse for housing counselors. And so if you were to go to their website, and I don't have the number with me, but call that number, you would be able to find some resources there. But in the Cincinnati area and in Hamilton County, there are a plethora of organizations doing this work. Legal Aid is doing it, WIN is doing it, Price Hill Will is doing it, Acorn's doing it, a number of agencies doing it. The problem is that because so many people are now learning to take advantage of these counselors, there are groups coming in that are not legitimate. and people are getting sucked into organizations that are asking them for a down payment up front to do this counseling, and they're not legit, and they walk away with the money. So beware to people that find themselves in foreclosure. Do go to the Save the Dream website. Do call legal aid. Do make a phone call and find out whether or not the organization that's soliciting you is legitimate. But it's critical that the homeowner not walk away from this and not be afraid of what the foreclosure process is. They must get involved right away.
Denise, status of House Bill 3?
House Bill 3 passed through the House. It is now over in the Senate. In the Finance Committee, they were preoccupied with the budget. I acknowledge that, but I'm hopeful that in the fall they will take it up. And we have gone over to met with Senator Carey, who is the chair of that committee, and we're hopeful that it will move out of the Senate and become law in the fall.
Josh, where do you stand right now?
Well, where we stand right now, we're seeing, unfortunately, we're seeing an increase, and as Denise has indicated, also, we see many folks who have been taken by some of these companies that aren't legitimate.
Yeah, we're going to have a program on that with the Attorney General coming up.
Good,
yes.
Good. Many times, if I can speak to these people before they become involved with these organizations, maybe we can point them in a different direction. As far as our program and where it goes from here, we just hope to keep building on the success that we've had so far. In Claremont County now we have a website that our program is looking to get involved with and put our information on that site. It's the Claremont County Save Our Homes program. I'm involved as a member of that panel. Many other county officials, members of the community, we all get together once a month and we talk about where we can go in Claremont County to alleviate this problem as quickly as we can.
I just want to say Josh is doing this, by the way, on his own time. He's doing this no extra pay. He's taken on this whole program, and I'm very proud of what he's done and the accomplishments he's had.
Thank you, Judge.
And thank you very much for starting the program. Denise, thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Josh, thank you for being with us today. Good
Thank
information. To find out more about foreclosure prevention and other community resources, visit our special website at cincymortgagecrisis.org. You may also call the United Way at 211 and ask for help with your mortgage concerns. If you would like to watch this and other Focus episodes again on demand, you can do so at our website, cetconnect.org/focus. Thank you for watching. I'm Kathy Lair. Good evening.
Any use or rebroadcast of this copyrighted program or portions thereof is prohibited without the express written approval of CET.